Hello, and welcome to Studio 2. Thank you all for coming in. It's great to see so many seats filled, actually, being the only audio panel in this conference. So terrific to see you all. We are about to embark on a session chock full of information, insight, perspectives, all about audio and the global opportunities there are out there for IP in kids' audio. So before we get started, though, with the business of kind of talking about audio, we're going to meet the panel. I'll introduce you soon. I want to speak a little bit about myself first, but I won't go on too long because my day job is literally to send people to sleep. I am a voice actor, and I have a... my name, Abby Offer. My niche in voice acting is rest, relaxation, and sleep. I've worked for several meditation apps and sleep apps over the years, but almost 3 years ago, I co-founded a podcast, very, very precious podcast, called Koala Moon, multi-award nominated, and it features original children's bedtime stories and meditations designed to make bedtime a dream. Recently, we launched its little sister pod called Koala Tots, and that's for toddlers and babies. And a few weeks ago, Koala Moon surpassed 25 million downloads. And I'm just going to say that is testament to our insanely gifted team, writers and producers, and the Herculean efforts of my talented, skilled team at Sleepiest, two of whom are sitting right there. So yeah, it's been a team effort, and I didn't know I would be here 40 years ago. My discovery of audio began at bedtime, and it was a game changer for me and my parents. All I needed at night time were my beloved cassette tapes and my Walkman. And it didn't matter what was going on in the home or at school or in life in general. I would listen religiously for guaranteed entertainment, comfort, and rest. And I can still hear Frank Muir, Bernard Cribbins, Miriam Margolyes, and their lovely voices in my head. But here we are in 2024, and we're living in a wholly different audio landscape from cassettes and Walkmans. Kids' audio devices and podcasts have exploded in popularity, and the opportunities for IP creators to get in on the action are plentiful. So the objective of this panel is to give you, the IP owners, a clear insight into the market and how you should connect, collaborate, and commit, the theme of this conference, to succeed in the children's audio space. And we have 4 experts sitting next to me from across the world of children's audio. They include IP owners, podcast originals, platforms, and they're going to share their thoughts and their perspectives, as well as provide some practical advice. And after they've introduced themselves, we're going to have some questions, and then I will open up the floor for all of you to ask your questions. Before we get on to the question bit, I'm going to just set the scene a little bit in terms of the landscape for audio and children's audio specifically. So, a recent report by Grandview Research estimated the global audiobooks market size at $6.83 billion in 2023, and it's expected to expand at a compound annual growth rate of 26.2% from 2024 to 2030. Nielsen stats from 2023 report Understanding the UK Children's Book Consumer says that the percentage of kids listening to audiobooks weekly is rising year on year, with boys particularly strong. And finally, recently released listener data from Edison Research and Kids Listen in the US shows 63% of kids aged 6 to 12 are aware of podcasts, and that number jumps to 74% of parents who are monthly podcast listeners. Nearly half of all kids have ever listened to a podcast. So clearly, podcasts and audio in general for kids is on the up and up. So there is a lot of potential in the children's audio space, from creating originals and building your audio-first IP to licensing your existing IP brand to audio platforms. And we are really, really delighted today, pleased to introduce you to a group of people who are already doing amazing stuff. Right next to me, I've got Stephanie Gould, the digital director at Blue Zoo. And next to her, Ellie Rose, senior portfolio manager at Tony's UK and Ireland. And then Carla Herbertson, director and co-founder of Small Wardour, and Katie Tully from BBC Sounds. She's head of curation at BBC Sounds. So I'd really like, if possible, to ask them to introduce themselves, say a few words, and then we'll play a little clip and move on. So over to you, Stephanie.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Gould. I'm the digital director for Blue Zoo, which is just an amazing animation studio. We also look after a range of fantastic IP, including number blocks, alpha blocks, colour blocks, and create lots of digital products for these brands, including YouTube products, YouTube channels, lots of games, and now audio products as well. And we're about to play a clip from a really lovely app from the team called Number Blocks and Friends Stories. And that's a collection of bedtime stories. It's mainly number block stories. We've also got a new colour blocks and alpha blocks one. And the clip here is from colour blocks.
Okay.
Picnic time, says Blue. He's serving up his big blue picnic. There are bottles of ice-cold blueberry juice, bowls of juicy, ripe blueberries, and a plate of freshly baked blueberry muffins. It's delicious.
Great, okay. And now to Ellie Rose.
Hello, my name's Ellie. I work for Tony's. For those of you who maybe don't know, Tony's is a children's musical storybox, so it is actually a physical product. I should have bought one today, sorry. Everyone can Google it afterwards. So we have sold over 7 million Tony boxes globally and 88 million Tonys globally. The market is really growing and expanding. We have 4 key markets, the Germany and the DACH region, the US, Canada, UK and France, and we'll be launching in Australia and New Zealand as well soon. So really a global company, and I work with all of our partners bringing them to the Tony box. And the clip I have brought is with an upcoming collaboration with the Natural History Museum. And I thought it was a nice one because they're not necessarily known for their content, but we worked with them to create really engaging content.
Your voices sound so funny. Oh, so does mine.
Shrinkification complete.
Oh my goodness! The Shrinkmobile has shrunk down to the size of a beetle with us inside.
Okay, on to Carla next.
I'm Carla. I'm a co-founder and director of Small Wardour. We're a children's audio consultancy and production company, and we're very proud owners of our own podcast slate, award-winning podcast slate. We have 4 podcasts currently: Super Great Kids Stories, Bust or Trust, a kids mystery podcast, Bullfrogs and Lizards, and our latest podcast for babies and their parents is called My First Podcast. And we've got a couple of clips.
Hello and welcome to Bust or Trust, a kids mystery podcast. I'm Tiernan.
And I'm Athena. Bust or Trust is the podcast where we unravel the world's greatest mysteries with help from you, our chief detectives.
In My First Podcast, we listen to all the sounds we can find around us. That is water splashing around.
Larry looked at the ground as the icy pole immediately began to form a sticky puddle.
Yes, it's me, Troop, from Super Great Kids Stories, back once again from my travel.
Okay, and on to Katie.
Hello, I'm Katie. I have a background in children's. I worked at Cartoon Network, I've worked at BBC Children's, and most recently I've been working across BBC Sounds, which is the BBC audio product and app. So where it brings together all of our national radio stations, our on-demand podcasts, our on-demand music mixers, all into one space, and particularly part of that is the CBeebies radio and the children's content within that.
Lovely, let's hear it.
CBeebies isn't just a treat for your eyes, it's also a treat for your ears. We have so much waiting for you on BBC Sounds. From wonderful stories and CBeebies radio fun,
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, climb!
Through to songs that encourage daily routines and mood management.
Get up, 'cause here's your chance.
And calming sounds to help your little ones drift off to sleep. It's
CBeebies for your ears.
That's glorious. Thank you. Thanks all. Carla, can I start by asking you, Small Wardour, it helps brands and publishers to establish themselves in the audio world, I'm guessing. I'd love you to speak a little bit more about Small Wardour, actually, and just tell us what makes it such a great audio platform.
Well, Small Wardour is not an audio platform itself. Yeah, we're a consultancy. But what makes a good audio platform for kids is a tangible, accessible, physical... a platform. So you have Tony's, you have Yoto, you have Fox Blocks, you have, especially in France, a variety of Looney. You've got in Italy, you've got Faber, and you've got Story Button in the US. So there's a lot of mix and Storypod. There's a lot of mixture of great products out there for kids, where they can actually access audio themselves, a bit like you were talking about how you used to access audio through cassettes. And I think that's a really powerful way, and that's a really interesting way. The problem for me with it is that it costs money. These boxes cost money. So I think as as makers of audio, we chose to go the podcast route, where we have where kids can listen for free to podcasts. But and the other thing that is great for kids to listen to now is that Spotify have come to the market with audiobooks on Spotify. It's not only listening anymore on Audible. So basically, wherever kids are, there should be audio, and I think radio is a very important part of this. And I used to work. I told Katie this when we were talking about. I used to work for BBC many years ago, 10 years. All the radio programs I worked for were axed because it wasn't, at that time, maybe it wasn't the right time for radio to be around anymore. But it's all coming back, and I think the interesting thing is that all of these boxes are really for kids, preschoolers till about 8 years old, and we tend to lose children from that because they start getting phones and are not necessarily interested anymore in kind of these toy boxes. So I think we lost a lot with cassettes, and somehow we need to get that back, but there's still quite a long way to go. But podcasts have so much potential because you could be on all sorts of platforms as well.
Yeah, sorry, I mix up the definition of the word platform. It gets bandied around so much.
Yeah, I mean by platform where you listen, and how you access. And I think a lot of audio, especially, is still has to be driven by the parents. So the discovery of audio happens a lot through parents. So from preschool to about 8 years old, some parents are pushing it, but it's very still much a middle class product. And I'd really like to see that kind of expand and have audio in every single household. And I think that is possible with podcasts.
Okay. Can I bring you in, Katie, to ask about the BBC Sounds offering for children?
So we launched BBC Sounds in 2018, November 2018, and that gave us the opportunity to put CBeebies Radio in the dial alongside Radio 1, Radio 4, so bring it into the family. We've started to see a little bit more growth in children's audio on the platform. We're starting to see, so we do a weekly drop onto RSS. What you were saying, audio should be everywhere, accessible where the kids are. So there's a weekly drop of CBBC's radio podcast onto RSS. It's starting to see a bit of an uptake, particularly in the last month or so. So there is a wide range of content available. Our children's content commission acquire, produce content for CBBS that goes onto the BBC Sounds app. But also some of our big networks. Radio 4 commissioned a Wombles with Richard E. Grant reading at Christmas, you know. So there's real opportunities for co-listening out there, and we know the value of it. And during lockdown, has anyone listened to Fun Kids Radio, which is brilliant, by the way? It's on DAB, but we acquired some of that content to sit on Sounds where that, you know, schools were shut and what were the opportunities out there. So it was just another break from screen time. I think we hear this a lot. I was talking to colleagues in Radio France. That's really vital for them. That it's a real key message for them, that screen time is very valuable in lots of areas, but there's also that sort of, actually, audio is really, really important, particularly on long car journeys, right? That's the great thing about BBC Sounds. You can take it in your car. You've got your smart speakers, which have replaced the radio. So you've got, no one's got an Alexa in the room, have they? But you can ask for CBBS content on your smart speaker. And you can take audio with you. That's something, it's so portable, it's so personal, and it's really valuable.
So are there plans in the making for BBC sort of children's content to really kind of be pushed on? Because it's quite hard to find at the moment.
It is hard to find. The thing all of our products are investing in at the BBC is personalisation. So, believe it or not, I've got a really hard job. We've got 600,000 pieces of content available on BBC Sounds at any one time, right? That is a lot of content that we have to sort of find ways to surface. But the BBC is investing in personalisation, right? So children's content being in there in a mix is really, really valuable for that. We're also, we've got a bit of an experiment going in the next couple of quarters, working with product teams. Anyone works with the product team, right? Never put a timeline on something. But apparently, at some point, we're going to be doing a discovery project about how we can curate children's content to audiences better on Sounds, and that will be humanly curated. So that's using expertise about what is the right content to get to the right audiences. So there's a couple of things going on.
Just a little. Sounds great stuff. Okay, Ellie, can I ask you about the Tony's box as a device, as a toy? What opportunities are there in IP, in audio that the audience here might not have considered?
Yeah, so we are a physical product. So it is slightly different. The product was built and designed for children to use. So it's really intuitive. Kids you show them how to use it, they can use it. So it is screen free. So the kind of big feedback we always get from parents is around screen time and not wanting to give their phone or their iPad to their kids. So the kids are fully in charge of what they listen to. They can put the Tonys on and off. They know how to skip tracks. So it's really an amazing opportunity to connect your brands with the children directly. It's often also like people want their screen time. They say you can watch something for 20 minutes. With the Tony box, they say it's fine. I'm happy for them to listen to as much as they want. And it will often be the first sort of device in a child's bedroom. And they're happy to leave it there. There's no speaker, there's no microphone. So if you want to connect with your kids that are either already there or you want to grow the audience, it's a great way. It's like a Tony's legend story that there was a Disney executive who had a Tony box and his son didn't really know what he did, and he had a Cars Tony and he loved the Cars Tony, and he went to his dad one day and was like, oh my God, I love this Cars Tony, you should make a film. And so it's like they haven't, that kid was too young, they didn't want to show them the film, but they already knew the brand, they're aware of the brand, so you're connecting with those kids before they maybe have even heard or seen the show or heard it on the radio. So, yeah, it's a really great way to have that direct access to the kids.
Okay. And Steph, Digital Director at Blue Zoo, what can you tell us about audio opportunities out there in the digital sphere?
Yeah. So, obviously we've talked about podcasts and screen-free products as well, which are absolutely amazing. I mean, we've also just launched Numberblocks and Friends apps. So, I mean, there's some really great audio-only apps out there, which just create great experiences. So I think that's another way. We worked with Amazon a few years ago and created an amazing Numberblocks Alexa skills piece of content. So we've got a quiz, which is really engaging, and I think that sort of ties into that kind of, this is content on the go, which is often, when it's in a car, that's a shared experience. So it's not only thinking about, what content can I create for the child, but it's also, what content is palatable to their parents as well. So we've done that for Alexa skills, and then we do lots of music streaming as well. So, across Spotify and Amazon and Apple Music.
Wow, there's so much. Carla, do you have anything extra that you can add that Small Wardour
So we do it slightly differently. So we like Steph is kind of looking to platforms or creating apps. So we have created our own podcasts, and we start them as audio first IPs. So my first podcast is a podcast for babies and toddlers, and it links sounds with words. It's very much the board book, kind of like you have your board book, but it's the audio version of the board book. And then we're building that. So we're now in talks with publishers to build that into a book. And then we're the same for Bust or Trust, our kids mystery podcast, which has been going for just a year now. But we have a book deal and a book coming out in September 2025, as well as Super Great Kids Stories, which started as and still is going as they're all weekly podcasts, apart from one, and becoming, will also be a book. We have events that we do, so we will be at the podcast festival in London with Bust or Trust with a live event. We've done live events with Super Great Kids Stories, where we get storytellers and kids together. So it's very much start with the core of kind of audio, storytelling, sound, but also very much values of Bust or Trust came from the idea that we need to kind of be able to debate in a bit more of a friendly way and listen to each other, which, this whole kind of Brexit thing, now we have a different government, now we're all going to be nice again to each other, but you know what I mean? It's like, so we really wanted to, Bust or Trust is basically a mystery, and one presenter is a buster and the other one is a truster, and we asked the kids, the chief detectives that listen, and will you bust or trust the mystery? They get 3 pieces of evidence, and it's about critical thinking. We are going into schools with that, so we've teamed up with the Philosophy Foundation and have created resources, and it's now being used in schools. So it very much is kind of building kind of RIP that way, rather than the other way around, starting with kind of, digital first, I would say. Although audio is digital as well, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. Okay. God, there's a lot to take in, right? Or is it just me? There's a lot. How do you monetize? I don't know who to ask this to first, but monetizing your audio. Can I start with you, Steph?
Yeah, definitely. Monetization of children's content is hard, right? It's hard across every sort of product. And I think audio is no different. And sometimes you can do that very much in a standalone product, like the app I keep mentioning, which is definitely on track to kind of be profitable. But I think quite often, like with other pieces of content, you really need to think about scalability. So if you've created a great piece of audio content, it's also, how can I turn this into a video format for YouTube? Or, will this work in an app that I've also got? We repurpose the music from all the shows and we put that across lots of different platforms. And then I think finally it's also about different language versions. And we're seeing lots of success around that for Numberblocks. So we've got a lot of our products translated into 5 different languages. And we're sort of beginning to roll out more as well. And we're seeing a lot of success for Spanish and Portuguese. So we're going to be iterating on those on more audio platforms.
Okay. Spanish and Portuguese, I'm guessing, because they're huge territories.
They're huge territories, There's less kind of advertising revenue from those markets and less spend, but the size of the market kind of outweighs that.
Okay. And Ellie, can you talk a bit about monetizing? Making the financials make sense.
Yeah, so obviously we're on the other side. We're the license. We sort of license in the content. So I can tell you how Tony's works, which is we work on an MG and a royalty basis. So if we decide to license and create a Tony, there'll be an upfront MG, and then royalties that will recoup against that MG. And then once that MG is recouped, then the royalties are just paid on a quarterly or half-yearly basis. And then obviously the more global your IP is, if we can release that Tony in multiple markets, again, it's about the scale. So we will, in the US in particular, if the brand is big in the US, obviously the market opportunity in the US is huge, but we are a global company. So if you have an IP that is known in lots of territories, obviously there is, great opportunities to sell the Tonys and make good money.
And Carla?
Yeah, so podcasts work on a variety. So we have subscription income. So podcasts are very much, we are building communities. So, we are building really communities and wanting our listeners to be part of our journey. And so we offer additional content for subscribers, newsletters, additional episodes. And these subscribers are also our super fans that will come to the events and will buy books. So they're really, really precious to us. And then obviously we do advertising and sponsorship, but we don't do dynamic ads. So we don't do dynamic ads inserts because we don't know what will, even though we have tried in the past to be really, really careful with it. Something can always slip through, and we're very, we want our content to be safe. So we only work with advertisers that we approve ourselves. That's how we kind of make money. And then obviously we make money from building the IP and the recognition as well. Yeah.
Okay.
And then the licensing, actually, on the other side of it is turning it into a book. So licensing it, that will create money again. We're talking to some German companies and a Danish company that want to buy the ideas and will turn it into their versions. So it's about kind of monetizing in that way. Yeah.
The monetizing thing is difficult, isn't it? Because there is a tension between, like you say, wanting to put a good product out there and to build community, but also you do need to survive. So you need to somehow get some money back into the pot in order to continue doing that.
And obviously we don't advertise to kids directly. That's another thing we don't do. So we advertise to the parents, and we're very, very careful about what we choose. So I was just saying earlier to someone, if McDonald's would come in, and I thought, maybe not, but if they have a lot of money, but that we wouldn't do that, and we have said no to sponsors or advertisers that wanted to, and we work within a podcast community. We work with other podcasts like Koala Moon in order to grow our audiences.
Yeah.
But I'm very much looking at business development almost outside that kind of initial podcast monetization. So the licensing, the selling of the ideas, the IP development, what will come with it. Because how I see the podcast is building that audience and building that community, and that will then go into different business opportunities. So for me, that's really important.
In a way, the sky's the limit.
Oh, it really is. Only just started.
Yeah, we just got to keep plugging away.
Yeah.
Katie, do you have anything to add on this?
Well, I have to defer to my friends at BBC Studios because obviously we don't monetise the BBC, but you're right. It's either a subscription based. You can look at services like Patreon where you get rewards back, or it's advertising, like you say, careful considerations about dynamic insertion of ads, but you could look at things like host reads and things like that. But that in the BBC that is dealt with by BBC Studios. So.
Yeah, well, but thank you for answering anyway. If anybody here in the room wanted to pitch to one of the four of you and get their IPs sort of recognised or listened to for Tony's or BBC Sounds or whatever, what would you be wanting to hear from them? What would turn your head? What would be of interest? Can I start with you, Ellie?
Yes, so a few different things. I mean, the first thing I think for us is always the content itself and the quality of the content. Like, we want to really curate our portfolio, so we need to know that if the content exists, like that it's really great quality, really engaging, or the potential for the content, which we do work with a lot of our partners to create content as well. And then any data is really important to us. So about your audience, your listeners, how engaged are they, how many listens, how many downloads, we have customer requests for that content, like if you have other consumer products like book sales, like what are your book sales? So any kind of data that shows us that there is an audience there, if it's an existing IP. If it's something newer and smaller, we still also want to make sure we're bringing in. So to make a Tony, if people won't know, that it can take 18 to 24 months to create the actual Tony and bring it to market. So we are looking very long term. So we do also want to make sure we're taking the chance on newer and smaller IPs because we need to meet the audience where they'll be in potentially 2 years' time. So again, if you have plans, like if you can show that your brand is really growing, things like that are really important to us. And yeah, then it really just comes down to the real quality of the content. And if we think it's a good fit for our portfolio, the portfolio is pretty big now. So we do need to know that it's going to sell as well or better than some of our existing Tonys. But we try and have a good balance of kind of really well known and then taking the chance on sort of smaller, newer things.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay, so you are open to new creators, or not just simply the kind of very high profile, well known.
Definitely. I mean, we're always going to have Disney. We're always going to have the Gruffalo, like that. People want that, but we want to make sure that we also have different things. If it's a different use case, if it's like bedtime content, like whatever it might be, and make sure we're also being sort of representative of different people. So we don't just want those big IPs. Obviously, we need those to make big money as well, but we also want to make sure we have a good spread.
Mm-hmm, lovely. Okay, and Katie, with BBC Sounds, are you looking to just use what you've already got in the kind of stable of CBBS and CBBC?
Oh, that's a really good question. Mm-hmm. I think there are a couple of routes. I think there is BBC Children's and then BBC Sounds as well. So they're your sort of commissioning in routes all through the networks. So the first thing is go to the commissioning website. That will point you in the right direction. Now, is it a Wombles with Richard E. Grant? Does it have a space on Radio 4? Or is it something that's aimed at preschoolers that's specifically for CBBS audience? I think for us, the key thing is start with the audience first. Who is the audience you're trying to reach? What is the story you're trying to tell? How will this be useful for the audience? What will they get out of it? I think that should always be your starting place.
And what's the cycle of commissioning? Is it once a year or is it?
Steve, what's your children's commissioning?
It's kind of ongoing, really.
Ongoing.
Yeah. As and when. Okay. Thank you, Steve. Let's say there's somebody here in the room that has a fantastic idea, but they are just a single person and they want to kind of talk to you about it, but maybe it's not fully fledged as an idea, it's more just a sort of a germ of an idea. Is it worth even approaching you to discuss, or?
My first advice would be find an indie to partner up with. Find someone else who can actually realise what your vision is and help you shape it and develop it. And if you partner up with an indie, that offers you up to lots of different opportunities. So it might be that you come to the BBC, it might be that you come to Tony's, they can look at other opportunities. So I would partner up with someone first.
Okay. Does anyone have anything else they'd like to add
Do
about
it yourself.
The DIY route?
Yeah, no, because when we set up our company a couple of years ago, and we got a lot of interest went to see, Wondery, Amazon, Spotify, and all. They were all interested in the ideas we were pitching, but they were like our babies, and we were just like giving away our IP, and we felt that really wasn't the right route for us, and we got excited about the things that we wanted to create, and we had values that attached to them, and we wanted to kind of do more with it. And I think for us, we then decided it was really nice and flattering to have all of those conversations, but actually we just decided to do it ourselves. And we knew, because we already had Super Great going by then, we knew that we could do it. And so that's why. But there comes a stage where I also said to someone today, we have 4 now, and it's like having children. You have to stop because these are kind of like, you need to put a lot of love in them. You can't just let them weekly, 3 that go out weekly, new content that has to be made, and the listening audience they're critical, and you can't just let it be. You have to keep not reinventing it, but you have to keep making sure that you treat it really, really well. And I think so for now, no more children, and then maybe next year or the year after we'll look again.
Okay, but then you'll also be working with schools, and you'll be working with
you see, and it's getting more and more, and it's getting more busy, and that's so exciting about it. And I went into a school to kind of test these resources, and it was just amazing to see, because obviously schools, they have the interactive board, so it's on YouTube, but we just have the logo on YouTube, and there's some small kind of imagery. But to be able to see it in action and to see how teachers were using it, and that's kind of why we started doing it. It was so exciting. And then doing these events, the event that we're going to be doing in September is going to be live. It would be so amazing doing that directly with the kids. So that's hugely exciting.
I have a question here. What are the benefits of working with a global mindset for audio IP rights, licensing partners, market constraints, etc.? It sounds like a biggie.
I think it is a biggie, and I think it goes back to that monetization and just and the scalability that you need for digital products, and just to make sure that you're making significant revenue. So I think it's very essential to kind of think of all of those different language iterations. Also, if you've got a great product, you've got a great brand, you want to get it out there to different audiences. I mean, we've seen like a huge impact from number blocks and alpha blocks. We get just amazing emails and comments from parents about how those shows have really helped their children and helped build up their math skills. So that's something we're all kind of passionate about in terms of getting that out to wider audiences. But yeah, there are constraints, and we have partnerships with amazing broadcasters. And as part of those, sometimes we do have a few constraints. So, but that's always a conversation to be had as well, in order to work out how can we come to a solution that kind of benefits both sides.
Yeah, it sounds like lots of conversations, lots
Absolutely.
Of kind of delicate working out. Yeah. Okay, and Carla, do you work generally in this country, or are you global? Well,
the consultancy we do is global, so we work globally with mainly kind of publishers and brands that want kind of audio strategy. But in relation to the podcast, our listeners are 50% UK and 50% America, so lots of our listeners are in the US. And then we are licensed, so we're trying to license our content to different countries. But another thing I do is kind of really looking at repackaging what we have. So we are on some kids' audio devices like Voxblock. Bust or Trust will be on Voxblock. So we're repackaging the material and making it into a 60 minutes, which is it's an audiobook device. Google it, like Ellie. But yeah, and we are in the US on Playway, which is a library platform. So I'm very much always thinking about how can I repurpose what we have to kind of make sure that the revenue is coming in on from different sides. But yeah, obviously, because we're English speaking, we will be mainly UK, US, and Australia. But we're now looking at partners to looking at Spanish language, and then we're looking for very much for my first podcast, because it's also the easiest one to kind of translate into individual languages like German and Danish. Yeah.
And I have to ask you, as a voice actor, will you be hiring voice acters to do the translating, or will you be using AI?
Listen, this always comes up in the publishing conferences that I do. No, we're a studio. You know, we produce content for Tony, so we pitch ideas to them. That's another way of it in with them. You have to try it out as well. But we pitch ideas to them, and we produce content for Tony's and Yoto. So, you know, as a studio, we will always. For as much, and I haven't come across, and I've been in this business for a long time, I've come across really good AI voices, and of course there are users of them for certain, for certain products, especially for back catalogues with publishers, you know, bringing to life back catalogues that would otherwise normally never be accessible audio-wise. But I still really, really believe strongly in how we tell stories with a human voice, and I think that's really, especially for kids, and especially the kids that we are aiming our products at, our podcasts at, which are very young. I think it's really, really important to keep that going. But we cannot stop AI, and we need to find out how we can utilise it. You know, so I'm not going to sit here and say, till I'm 80 and everyone has moved on, I will not do that, because I think that's just unrealistic. But I think we've so interesting came to the studio and said, well, we did this audiobook with this author. We were going to do this audiobook with this author. He has died now, but I've got his voice on cassette. So I was wondering if you could create the AI version for me. And we were like, ethically, no, and no, because, you know, and there's a lot of publishers that are putting in clauses within their licensing deals that you know, audio needs to be read by a human voice. But then there's a lot of other stuff that's happening in the AI world. For example, in Storytel, which is a platform, operates very much in Scandinavia and Germany, and whereby you now can choose if you want to listen to human narration or AI narration. You can choose, kind of flick between them. And they're doing that only with their originals, because I know they wouldn't have gotten okay with that from publishers otherwise. So it is interesting that is happening. And I think you've guys done something with AI, but in a really interesting way at bedtime. Do you remember?
Yeah, we did a Christmas story that used AI, but it was for personalisation of a story. So it wasn't necessarily like all of the voices in the creation. It was like all still led by the team internally. But then I think that is where there are potentially opportunities around like personalisation of content, bringing in like the kid's name. You could say what the kid's name is, and then it's like integrated into the story. But yeah, that's the kind of small test we just did to sort of see how it works.
It sounds like a lovely, a lovely idea. AI is here to stay, and children are becoming more and more familiar with AI voices and less bothered by them, I'm guessing. It's us, the parents, that are kind of in shock and find it all quite horrifying. But I think if you can find creative ways to use AI and maybe help out with your, like you say, personalization offer, or help out a little bit with the financials so that you can do more and better work with human voices.
But also from my perspective, AI, who's going to go on that stage to talk to the kids at the event? Do you know what I mean? There needs to be someone behind it, and I think that's what draws them in, and that's they want to have that connection with something. And I think when you, especially in podcasting, when you're trying to grow your community, your listeners, the intimacy, and if you take that away from it, there's no one at the end of it. I don't think I would like that as a creator.
No,
so you know, from IP development wise, for us, it wouldn't make any sense to do that.
I think you're right. I mean, we were talking about that earlier, and just about how personal it is, that kind of space. And when you're listening to an audio story, it does feel like the narrator's in your room. It feels like, quite an intimate moment. And, one of the team is here today who's kind of gone through a huge selection process with different voiceover actors in different languages just to get that right tone of voice. So we've got somebody who kind of embodies the values of the brand. And we're going to use those actors when we kind of revoice all those audio stories. We'll do it with those actors for that consistency and just for that careful selection.
Yeah, there's a lot of nuance, I think, and timbre and tone that's important to keep. Okay, so we're just moving on to the final question now, thinking about the theme of the conference, which is connect, collaborate, and commit. What is the first thing that each of you would recommend a brand or an IP owner do when they, what should they do? What should be the one thing? Collaborate, look for a studio. I mean, where would you go from there?
I would say if you want to think about audio, I think you need to think about what is your North Star? What is the one thing that you want to achieve with it? Not just do it for the sake of it, just for the sake of being on another platform. I think look beyond it and see what you can really do and create, and building your community. The amount of letters we get from kids and pictures and voice notes is amazing. So you have that is so valuable for even when you want to build your brand on other platforms and non-audio. So I think really, really think about not just like, okay, well we'll do audio. It's about where are you going to go with it, and what's the ultimate goal. And can you sustain it, right? Is your number one episode just as interesting and intriguing and engaging as 152? And if you can say yes to that, then it's a good idea.
Who's next? Who'd like to take it?
I was going to say I would think about retention. What's going to keep your audience coming back time and time again? Is it the bedtime? Is it the waking up in the morning? What's that habit? How are you going to keep that audience coming back? And do you know what? You because you're thinking about a children's audience, how is that going to grow? How are your children going to grow? How are they going to take this brand? What's the next step? I think about a lot. How is my CBeebies audience going to be a Radio 1 audience? How's it going to be a Radio 4 audience? It's thinking about those retention, growth. I'd start thinking about those. What is your plan?
The long view. Okay, Ellie?
I think as well, it's important to not just think of audio as like you sort of said, don't just be like, oh, okay, we'll do a bit of audio. Like, it's audio first. So if you have TV episodes, you can definitely adapt them. We do that a lot, but like, how will you adapt it? How will you bring something that is on a screen to an audio-only platform, whatever that is? So it needs something extra. You need to think about like how those kids are listening to it, how are they engaging with it, because it doesn't have the visual associated with it. So it needs to have amazing sound or the narrations, the voices, so it's very connected to the visual world, but it is also really its own thing, and you have to think how the audio is going to work on its own.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, I think it's about looking at the bigger picture. So we always start with, the child and the user behaviour. So, just the whole picture of what they're doing digitally, and audio is part of that. So whether, it's kind of looking at behaviour across YouTube and games and audio. And then I think it's digging into how they're using those audio channels, just like we've touched on, like bedtime in the car, collectively with your family. And then working out, does your IP actually fit that? Because, I think it's like you're saying, if it doesn't fit, you don't shoehorn it in. And there are so many different audio opportunities, as well as podcasts. So I think it is just thinking which is the right one for you.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you all so much. We've got, I think, 10 minutes or so to go for questions. If there's any questions out there, someone will bring you a mic. Stick your hand up and say your name. And
thank you. Hiya. I wonder what you all think maybe the scope for having interactivity within audio content.
Can I just have your name?
Tom.
Hi. Thanks.
I think it's really fun. I think it's really fun. I mean, we really looked into that with Alexa skills and just the quizzes. And we do lots of user testing as well. So I keep pointing to the senior producer over there. And so, yeah, there's a lot of scope, I think, for children just to kind of jump up and join in and answer questions or sing along. And lots of opportunities for humour, I think, in those interactive experiences.
My kids are still asking Alexa how long it is till Christmas. Has anyone heard that one? Oh, my goodness.
I'm sorry. How many days till Christmas?
Anyone else to answer?
No, I just think from interactivity, I think it's that kind of treasure your listener. Again, we ask a lot of voice notes, we play them, but we also listen to the kids and we really look at the data of where they drop off, or, maybe our intro was too long, and so we all of that. But I think we haven't necessarily done any skills, but there is constant interactivity because we're weekly, so we are able to kind of respond to what's been said and what's been sent in, and that goes on socials again, so there is possibilities there. But I think, have you guys done any kind of interactive stuff other than the Christmas one? No.
Nothing sort of specifically interactive, but I mean, I think audio can inherently be interactive. We do things like quizzes, or we have a Tony's podcast as well, which is very sort of interactive with jokes and getting the kids involved in that sense. So I think any audio can be interactive.
I'd like to answer the question because for my podcast, I write all the introductions to each episode, and any child or parent who's subscribed, I mention them, I give them a shout out. And it's become an enormous driver for people to sign up and to start a conversation and a relationship. So we end up actually, well, not me, Jenna probably sees an awful lot of letters and communications from parents saying thank you, having already asked for the shout out, heard the shout out, then writing back and saying thank you, and then telling us their pets' names, and then asking if they can have this story written about that. I mean, it goes on, but it's great. It's really interactive.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else with a story? Story with a question? Over there.
Hi, my name's Helena Mitchell. I'm a presenter and voice actor currently touring with Bluey's Big Play. I was just wondering, you mentioned that it's really important to find the right voice actors. So how do you go about doing that? I mean, is it similar to, let's say, Panto, where you need that big name, you need that name that the kids recognise, or is that not important in audio?
I guess it depends on... I think it depends on the brand for Ellie, so she might say differently, but for what we didn't necessarily, we went with the feel and what we wanted the podcast to represent, and that's how and actually for my first podcast, it's our in-house producer. She's a singer and musician, and she voicing it, and she's perfect for it. But I think Ellie, for audiobooks, it's slightly different.
I think it really depends. Sometimes having a name, a celebrity, is great if that fits the brand, but we definitely don't always use celebrities. Because also sometimes actually having a great voice actor can bring more to the production than having a celebrity just because they're a celebrity. So I think it's really about finding the right person, the right tone for the production that you're producing.
Yeah, no, we would be exactly the same. We have worked with a couple of celebrities, but it's more about exactly finding the right tone of voice.
Another question. There's a gentleman over there who's had his hand up for a little while.
Hello. Thanks very much for that. It's great. I'm Dan. So do you have any advice for someone starting out in audio? There's people who've made your own content and started out. It sounded like you just went out there and did it yourselves with your own money. Is that what happened? Or are there places that finance this kind of thing? And are there...
So there's two routes, I think. It's the kind of commissioning route. So it's talking to, BBC, Audible, Wondery, Spotify is not as much doing kids stuff at the moment, but and trying to see if you pitch your ideas and talk to Tony's. So we're a production company as well, so we pitch ideas to Yoto and Tony's, and we produce content for them. But we keep the good stuff for ourselves, so we can build the brands. Sorry, but no, I pitched this idea to Yoto actually, and they loved it. And then I all of a sudden could see what it could become, and then they wanted it, and they obviously get the IP because that's how it works, and I kept it back, so I just couldn't do it. So and the rest is all bootstrapped. Yeah.
But then, what did you remortgage your house and then just go make it?
Well, no, because we're a consultancy and production company, so we have different kind of pots of money that come in. So for us, it's also creating our own podcast is very much, we won 2 awards, one for Buster Trust last year and one for Super Great Kids, and it's good advertising. It's not the reason why we're doing it, for advertising's sake, because we really want it. It's our pension pot. That's what. But we have a lot of client work, so we produce a lot of content. We do a lot of consultancy worldwide with publishers, and so that's how we kind of fund. And we have our own studio, so for us it's easier to do than for someone else. So I have several conversations today about how do we start and how do we do this. I mean, it is tricky, but like Katie said, you find an independent to work together, or you can do it by yourselves, or you pitch ideas to, for example, Yoto and Tony's, because they're always looking for content. I won't kind of take her job, but basically they've got Clever Tonys who are original content, and so they're always looking. We're working with the global Tonys team, and so we're producing a new product for them. So it's all about kind of getting all those contacts and going out there and pitch your ideas to them.
Okay, I think we've got time for one more question, and then that's it, and we have to run. So somebody has the microphone. Yeah. Can we make it a quick one? She's got the mic.
I've got a mic.
Yeah, go for it.
Susanna from Brilliant Trees. Great panel, by the way. Well done. I was just wondering, obviously you touched before upon audiences listening in the car and at bedtime, and obviously with your access to data, do you have any information on where those biggest audiences are among children in terms of time of day?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do, and you're right. I am looking over to my friends in children's who will look at this more ingrainedly. But I mean, in sounds, we can see the peaks and troughs that you would expect. You've got your morning peak. You've definitely got your bedtime peak, and that's one of our biggest titles. Are those calming sounds, CBeebies calming sounds? Actually, I think.
There's some research done. Kids Listen with Edison Research, and they're very much into the kind of podcast listening. So where what type of content they listen to, etc., etc. So I'd have a look for that.
That's brilliant, thank you, because I think it does reflect, doesn't it, sort of the content that you're going to pitch.
And audiobooks are different than podcasts, So they're two very separate products still. So there's a different data for audiobooks, and and Nielsen's got some data on that.
Oh, it's 3:00.
Nielsen. Yeah, thank you for that. Thank you.
Sorry, guys. I'm going to have to wrap it up. Thank you all for coming. Bye. Thank you.